Ya Allah. Inshallah, we're getting started now. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم وأكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم انفعنا بسنة نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا من أنصاره وأتباعه يا رب العالمين. اللهم علمنا من سنته ما يحيي قلوبنا ويصلح أحوالنا. اللهم ربنا إنا نسألك أن تفك الكرب عنا ببركة قراءة حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والاتصال به واقتفاء أثره يا رب العالمين. فك بذلك الكروب عنا واجعلنا ممن يحشر في زمرته وتحت لوائه يوم الدين يا رب العالمين. أسقنا من يده الشريفة شربة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us of those who are the dutiful followers of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Make us of those who are committed to his sunnah. Make us of those who love to read his hadiths, his words, learn of his actions, and follow him in his behaviors. Ya Allah, we ask you to make us of those who embody the prophetic character. Ya Allah, we ask you to revive our hearts and our homes by the blessings of being connected with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Allah, we ask you to bless us with your love and the love of our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and make that a means for our salvation on the Day of Judgment. We ask you to better the condition of the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ in the East and West. Ya Allah, give charge to the best of us, charge of our affairs to the best of us, not the worst of us. Ya Allah, give charge of our affairs to the best of us, not the worst of us. Ya Allah, we ask you to better the condition of our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine. Ya Allah, give them victory over their oppressors. Ya Allah, be with our brothers and sisters in Lebanon and in Sudan and in Iraq and in Burma and in Kashmir and in Yemen and in all pockets that are afflicted from the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Allah, grant us a great revival in this day that is inspired by your book and the way of your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Allah, make the best of our actions the last of our actions, the best of our days the last of our days, the best of all days in the day we meet you and you are pleased with us. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ameen, ameen. Amma ba'd, jazakumullah khair for attending. Inshallah, we're going to be going over the chapter on spiritual exercise, which is it's the 11th chapter in as-Saliheen, Babul Mujahada. And some of you asked if I could give specific page numbers from the abridgment that we have. The abridgment that we have does something unique in that it rearranges the original as-Saliheen, and it does not include all of the hadiths in the original text. And it offers wisdom's commentary on each of the hadiths that are included. The abridgment is written by one of the great scholars of the past. His name is Shaykh Yusuf al-Nabahani. So the abridgment is actually in the original Arabic text. And then it was translated, this good translation that you see in front of you, if you have the book. And if you don't, you can get it over there. So the chapter on Mujahada is not in the abridgment that's in front of you. So today, we're not going to be using that book. I'm going to be using the original Riyadh al-Salih. And as I said to you guys last week, sometimes I will be doing that. I'll be going back to the original text because I don't want to miss out on some of the gems that are in the longer text. Inshallah, next week, I will be choosing chapters that are from the abridgment that are in front of you. That way we could connect with our book. The reason why we have a book for this course is because it's important to have a book as we're learning. We don't want it to just be general lectures, reflections. We want to actually grow in our knowledge base. And if there isn't something that you could reference outside of the class, outside of our sessions, then the amount of growth that you could possibly have is very limited. The purpose of having this book is not for us to read it page by page, but for you to build your own intimate relationship with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. This is an easily accessible text in English, and there are not many good commentaries on hadith in English, right? There are some, This is one of the good commentaries that is afforded in the English language. Take advantage of it. Just as we need to build an intimate relationship with the Quran, we need to build it with the Sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. It is the only way that we could begin to build a strong connection and a meaningful relationship with our Habib Muhammad ﷺ. There's no way someone could learn to love the Prophet if they don't know about the Prophet. And this is something we mentioned in the last Friday forum. There are 3 connections we have with our Prophet. Knowing, ma'rifah, loving, and that comes through knowing, mahabba, and ittiba', truly following, being committed, invested in actually conducting ourselves like Muhammad in our relationships. That's a very difficult thing to even imagine, to try, but we could only hope to aspire. I at least need to, calibrate myself, get my compass directed the way it should be directed, and I need to begin to start following this path of embodying the character of the Prophet ﷺ. Starts with knowing, followed by loving, and then dutifully following. Changing our words, changing our behaviors, changing our outlooks, making that all inspired by the Sunnah. So please, as I said, this book, it's a very thick book. Imagine that the book that you have is a very thick book. I don't know, it's maybe 500 pages, 600 pages. It's a very thick book. That is a commentary on some of the hadiths in Riyadh as-Saliheen. I have a commentary in the Arabic language. And by the way, the Arabic language is much more compressed in its wording and compact in its wording. I have a commentary, it's called Dalil al-Faliheen, Sharh Riyadh as-Saliheen. And that is in 4 full volumes in the Arabic language. If they were to try to translate this, it would easily become double the size. 8 volumes in English, easily double the size. So our tradition is very rich. If I want to learn and I want to grow, I need to invest myself. Take this, and the sections are, by the way, very brief. So I'd advise, throughout your week, as you're waiting for the next class, read some of the sections. Start in order. Maybe perhaps pick 1 section a day. Or if that's too much, pick 1 section every other day. Make 1 day dedicated to the Quran and another day dedicated to hadith. Do it like that. If you're pressed on time, it will not take you more than 15 minutes to read one of these small sections in this book. The sections may be 3 pages, 4 pages long, depending on the section. Some of them are even less than that. So try to make it a consistent dose that you have in connecting with the words of the Prophet ﷺ. It is a critical part of Iman. And this cannot be overstated. It is a pillar, a foundational thing that needs to be a part of my life. This is part of the intro. How many people here are not on the WhatsApp group? Not on the WhatsApp group. If you're not on the WhatsApp group, you could get on the WhatsApp group. Sisters, you can go to Sister Nadia. She's in the back over there, and she can make sure that you get on the WhatsApp group. Brothers, you can also go outside the masjid. There's a poster on the front of the masjid. There's a QR code there. Just scan the QR code, register, and you'll be added to the WhatsApp group. Jazakumullah khair. In the WhatsApp group, you will see a Slido link. You'll see a Slido link. And you could post your questions there. Just click on the link. We probably don't have any questions yet, I assume. Or actually, we do have one. I'm going to give about 10 minutes in the end of today's session to looking at those Slido questions. I'm going to see if there's anything. I'm going to give priority to the things that are relating to the subject, of course, before going over other questions. But I'll give 10 minutes in the end today to the Slido questions so that we have some engagement, some back and forth. And of course, if anyone's willing to ask their questions directly, they could do that as well. Yes? I'm not using Dalil al-Faliheen. If you want to follow along with the original Riyadh as-Saliheen, you can go to the original Riyadh as-Saliheen, the 11th subsection, in the first chapter, the first book, the book of etiquette, or the book of miscellaneous matters, I should say. And it's called Babul Mujahada, the chapter on spiritual exercise. Chapter on spiritual exercise. Good? So yeah, post your questions there to the Slido, and I'll give time to it in the end. If anyone wants to ask questions directly, they can as well. Jazakumullah khair. Babul Mujahada, spiritual exercise. What is it? Spiritual exercise, what does exercise bring to your mind? The word exercise, when you hear it, it makes you think of the gym. It makes you think of strengthening your muscles. Or, what other type of exercises people do? You have exercise in like a workbook, in a subject you're studying at school. In a sense, those are mental exercises, right? They work your mind on being able to grasp the concepts you're studying. That's another usage of the term exercise. Spiritual exercise is all about building our spiritual capacity. We begin to have what I call, how they call it muscle memory. Someone goes to the gym and they work out for a period of time, and then they stop going to the gym. When they restart going back to the gym, their muscle memory kicks in, and they're not going to start from zero again. Right? They're not going to start from zero. They're going to be able to advance much faster because their bodies have been exposed to the idea of working out, right? Muscle memory. What is spiritual muscle memory, right? That, for the believer, in my relationship, in my journey with Allah, to Allah Azza wa Jal, I need to get exposed to different things. The whole idea of spiritual exercise is based on the experiential dimensions of growth. I can only grow through experience. That's something I believe as a human being and as a Muslim. What does that mean, practically speaking? I will not know how to process certain types of loss until I go through them, right? The unimaginable pain of losing a child while you're still alive. Can't imagine how a mother, father would feel about losing our mother, daughter. I don't think anyone could truly, I could imagine, but I won't be able to fully understand and grasp it. And I won't know how those emotions will be at play until I'm in that situation. Other examples. Is the door here still open, by the way? Is the door still open? Please, if someone could keep it closed, that way we keep the spiritual calm of the space. I'll give you another example. I will not know my need to satiate hunger until I've experienced hunger, right? That's a part of how I grow as a human being. I get hungry, it makes me feel a certain way, and then I eat, that hunger goes away. I overeat, and then when I overeat, I learn what it means to be stuffed to the point where I can't function. And then I begin to calibrate on this journey. I begin to calibrate and grow as a human being in my dealings with others, right? I will not understand fully the concept of deception and how it makes people feel until I experience deception firsthand. I won't know how that feels. And that's part of what we learn from the story of Adam alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam was taught a lesson about who Iblis was and how he operates through what Iblis did to try to get Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam out of Jannah. If I'm someone who's never been exposed to that, then I won't know the pain that may be associated with that. And you know what? If I don't know the pain, I won't know and I can't gauge how I will react. Right? Some people, they have very aggressive reactions towards deception. I'm deceived. Is it going to change me? Right? Is it going to change how I operate? Are the emotional wounds that come with dealing people going to change my attitude towards people? Again, this is all about growth through experience. How does this relate to spiritual exercise? There are, different things in this journey that we have to Allah that believers get exposed to. Trials, that's one. And كم ربت الشدائد. كم ربت الشدائد. Trials build people. or can build people. Let me rephrase that. Trials can build people. And trials teach us about the most vulnerable aspects of our beings. That's a form of spiritual exercise I get exposed to as a believer. Loss, we already spoke about that. Desires, my wants, right? When people chase after their desires and wants and then realize what those desires end up doing to them, right? The desire for power and authority, the desire for getting the approval of human beings. And Allah Azza wa Jal addresses these experiential sides. Allah, for example, seeking the approval of human beings, right? Chasing after that. This endeavor that does little to satiate and fulfill people's needs. Allah Azza wa Jal describes it in the Quran. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ عِبَادٌ أَمْثَالُكُمْ. The people you call on other than Allah are just as needy as you. How on earth can you turn to them and worship? But again, that's like an experiential dimension where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes us. Hey, look, you want to knock on the doors of people? Guess what? There's going to come a point in time when you knock on the doors of human beings and you will find all doors are sealed shut. Right? And then Allah Azza wa Jal's door remains open. Allah says, أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ. Who's the one who answers the call of the one who's in dire necessity when he calls upon him? Right? Spiritual exercise. Brothers and sisters, we learn that in the Islamic spiritual tradition, there's a framework. It's not open-ended. It's not just, okay, yeah, be a good person and be sincere and be conscious of God and be patient. No. What does it mean there's a framework? There's a way to grow. There's a direction to grow in. And you know what I describe mujahada as? Mujahada is the driver of spiritual growth. Mujahada. So, and the word itself, before I start reading the hadiths and the ayat, the word itself, mujahada, I translate it as spiritual exercise. You go to the Arabic word, it could be traced back to another word, jihad. The word jihad. That should make you feel what? Terrified. No, I'm just kidding. Right? The word jihad, right? It'll be picked up online. I just say that a few times. Jihad, right? It's going to be picked up online, right? Jihad is this very beautiful thing in Islam, right? It teaches us to change ourselves first. That's what jihad is. Change our hearts. وَالْمُجَاهِدُ مَنْ جَاهَدَ نَفْسَهُ. Right? The true mujahid is the one who wages jihad against his nafs. Right? So what does jihad refer to? It refers to this element of struggle. When I think of struggle, I think of growing pains. There's no way that my nafs could get exposed to spiritual understandings without there being this struggle and without there being growing pains. That's when I think about spirituality and conceptualize spirituality, I understand that there is patience in worship, patience in avoiding sin, and patience with affliction. Those are three types of patience. الصبر على طاعة الله, الصبر عن معصية الله, والصبر على البلاء. These are three forms of patience. They bring me to that concept of struggle and growing pains. That's what mujahada is all about. Mujahada is for me to begin to understand how my nafs operates and what are the entry points of the shaitan to my heart, right? It's hard being someone who consistently prays. It's hard being someone who continues to avoid vice and sin. It's really hard. It's not easy. It takes a lot of self-control, especially when you have access to haram, right? So this is what the concept of mujahada is all about. And you know, as I grow in this journey, the types of trials will change. Right now, for example, someone who is considering entering into Islam or someone who's considering becoming a practicing Muslim. Their jihad, what does it look like? The shaitan makes them second guess and think once, twice, and thrice. Well, should I become Muslim or not? Oh, this thing seems so difficult. Oh, it seems like this is like this. It's so foreign to my culture and my understandings. And should I stay a Muslim? How do Again, this is the layer of thinking for someone who's new to it or newly practicing to it. The shaitan puts 1,000,001 roadblocks in the face of someone who's considering Islam. Oh, your family. Oh, what will people say? Oh, how is it going to change the way I dress? Oh, how is it going to do that? And so on and so forth. All these types of roadblocks, don't do it, right? And then when you get past that initial, so that's the initial, the struggle to believe. That's the first level of mujahada. The struggle to believe. And having some doubts about belief. When the person gets past that and advances beyond, that doesn't remain in my struggle. The nature of my struggle changes. That's what mujahada starts changing. And this is where most Muslims are, level 2. What's level 2? Level 2 is struggling to prioritize Allah. That's level 2. Struggling to prioritize Allah. And this is truly a very difficult endeavor. How can I prioritize pleasing Allah in all my affairs? How can I make Allah number one in the way I treat people? Right? Especially when I have the nafs snarling at me. Fight back. Argue back. Don't let them treat you like that. No. Argue back. Right? The nafs kicks in that situation. How can I prioritize? Or you know what? Let me think about my money and how I earn. How can I prioritize Allah in the way I earn? Oh my goodness, I have an opportunity for a job, but I'm not going to be able to pray Jum'ah. Or I have a job, but it's questionable. It has some haram income. Am I going to prioritize Allah in all of my affairs? Well, you know what? Those people who prioritize Allah in all of their affairs, sometimes it causes other people to quote unquote get ahead of them, right? They advance way beyond them. Oh, you want a fast buck? Get a loan. You want to be able to get ahead in your business? Get this massive interest-bearing loan and fund your entire business and life will be all good, right? Right? So that's a form of jihad. How can I prioritize Allah in all my affairs? With friend and foe, with money, with my desires, with my relationships. And then the third level of mujahada is a jihad, a spiritual struggle to give priority to every worship of the present moment. We call it ibadatul waqt, doing worship of the present moment. What does that mean? What does that mean? The responsibilities in my day and in my situations vary. The needs of my soul also vary. So mujahada exposes me to dimensions of getting to know me, all right? I'm starting to become a little bit overconfident. I need to break my nafs. I need to demolish this idol that's making me borderline arrogant. In fact, deep into arrogance. Why? Because I'm overconfident at a fault. I'm too confident in my views, my opinions, my ability. I need to do a mujahada there. That's what my nafs needs in the present moment. It needs tarheeb. You guys know what tarheeb means? Does anyone here knows what tarheeb means? Not irhab, right? Tarheeb, right? You guys know what irhab means, right? Yeah, okay. Making sure this gets picked up online somehow, right? So not irhab. What's irhab? Terrorism, right? What's tarheeb? Tarheeb is scaring your nafs. Scaring your nafs. Don't worry, we're only talking about the nafs, guys. What's the nafs? For anyone who doesn't know over there, you guys know the story of Imam al-Nawawi? You guys know this? You guys know Imam al-Nawawi, right? You guys know Imam al-Nawawi? You ever heard of him? Imam al-Nawawi was this great imam in our tradition, who was from this town in Syria. It's known as Nawa, right? Which is in Dar'a, this area in southern Syria. And he was referred to as the Imam of Nawa. He's attributed to the town that he was from. Just like they say, for example, Al-Masri, the Egyptian, or Al-Filistini, the Palestinian, right? He was a Nawawi. You know what Nawawi today refers to? What does Nawawi refer to today? Huh? No one knows Nawa anymore. Nawawi refers to nuclear, right? Nuclear. So he's the nuclear imam, right? It's not like some scientist who's aware of nuclear bombs or anything like that. He's from Noah. It's as simple as that. But it was said so many times in a class, Nawawi, 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 and it was picked up by however they pick up things, and say, who's this nuclear imam guy? You know, what group is he affiliated with, right? So, I'm serious. This is a story that's shared, Nawawi. Anyway, getting back, nafs, what does that refer to? My lower self. The lowly things inside me, right? The worship of the moment, that's the third level of the spiritual struggle. Knowing my spiritual needs. Sometimes my nafs needs tarheeb, and it needs to be scared. So that it could what? It could be very heedful of not oppressing human beings. It could be very heedful of not transgressing, not taking advantage, not being opportunistic, exploitatious, not delving too deep into, the distractions of life. You want to say something? First level is struggling with faith. The second level is struggling with prioritizing Allah. And the third level is struggling with the worship of the present moment. You got it? Those are the three levels of spiritual struggle. So ibadatul waqt, right? So this, sometimes my nafs needs targheeb. Someone who's like self-loathing, very bad thing, right? I hate myself. Allah will never forgive me. I don't deserve anything good. I'm a horrible human being. And so on and so forth. Someone who thinks along these lines, what do they need? They need to be exposed to Jamal. If you are with us in our Sunday reflections, there are certain, in the Sunday course there are certain things in the Quran that stand out to us because of their Jamal, their beauty. They have this beautifying effect for the soul. And then there are other things that stand out to us for their Jalal. They have this majestic side. They leave an impression of awe and reverence in the heart, right? There's Jalal and then there's Jamal, right? So someone who self-loathes needs targheeb, needs to be inspired to have hope, needs to listen to Jannah, needs to listen to Allah's beautiful attributes. That's what the nafs needs. This is part of mujahadah, right? And there's a lot more to say about that. I don't want to make this a course on its own. I want to get to know the hadiths. Let's get to know the hadiths. And before we get to know the hadiths, Imam Nawawi, we learned this. And by the way, Imam Nawawi is the one who gathered this as-Saliheen that we're reading. He gathered this collection of hadiths that we're reading. So Imam Nawawi always links us like this with each section. You want to access the hadiths? I want you to read the verses first. Because there is this link between the Quran and Sunnah that cannot be severed. You can't be a person who appreciates the Quran without loving the Sunnah. And you can't be a person who appreciates and loves the Sunnah without connecting it back to the Book of Allah and the words of Allah. Right? So it's beautiful how he starts off with the verses in each section. Let's read through it. Again, this is subsection 11 in the book of miscellaneous acts. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah conjures this spiritual principle known as ihsan, striving for excellence. Allah says, and those who wage jihad in our way, we will guide them to our ways. Right? Or wage jihad for our sake, we will guide them to our ways. Subulana. Right? The ways and the paths of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Something to think about. This is going to take us to the next section that we're going to study next time. The next section that we will study next time is the doors of goodness, the chapter on the doors to goodness. Babu kathrati turuq al-khayr. That's the one that we're going to go over, inshallah. So we're going to learn through that as I begin to spiritually exercise. When you go to the gym, right? There are things that you do to strengthen your chest muscles and arm muscles. There are other things that you do to strengthen your leg muscles and so on and so forth. Same thing spiritually. There are different needs spiritually, different things to focus on. Paths of, I'm going to get to know that, there's a different, there are different abilities. There are different abilities when it comes to spiritual growth. Yeah, there's connecting with the Quran and connecting with worship. That's one. There's another sense of spiritual growth that comes with the growth of knowledge, endeavoring to learn. There's another dimension of growth that relates to service, right? And so on and so forth. So these are subul. They're more than one path. Perhaps you'll be inclined to one of those paths or more than one of those paths. Very few are actually inclined to all of those paths. Very few people are able to gather between the inward and outward, the spiritual and the academic and the activist, right? The three, that's a very, very rare thing. You'll find people more inclined towards academia or worship or activism, but to gather all three, that's a rare thing. It's a rare thing. So anyway, and that's beautiful. It's beautiful that we have this concept of spiritual exercise that exposes us to a diverse portfolio that's in Islam about worship. There's a very diverse, there's not one way to worship in Islam. That's beautiful. Because if there was one way to worship, it won't bring out the best that's in humanity, right? Remind yourself of this word. I say this in different classes I have. Remind yourself of this word. It's a very important phrase to understand. Everyone has something, no one has everything. So it's a principle to live by in life. If you're someone who's struggling to figure out your purpose, remind yourself of this. Everyone has something. Allah, inna Allah qassama al-arzaqa bayna ibadah. Allah has distributed provisions between His creation. Everyone has something. No one has everything. And as I endeavor the path of spiritual exercise and mujahada, it is also a path of self-awareness, self-discovery. So that's something that we learn from this ayah. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Allah teaches us in the second verse that Imam Nawawi shares, worship your Lord until yaqeen comes to you, certainty comes to you. This teaches us that certainty is something that's cultivated, honed. It's not something that just comes as a given like that. There's no switch inside you. Oh, you're Muslim now? Oh, you have all the convictions on point and you're certain. It's not the way it works. Yaqeen is something that needs to be honed, developed, cultivated, nourished, taken care of. That's how yaqeen is born. Yaqeen is born of spiritual exercise. That's the second thing that we learn from this. وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. Spiritual exercise needs focus. Spiritual exercise needs focus. I need to have some clarity of mind, emotional clarity, mental clarity, to actually be able to study my nafs. If my mind's not clear, and if I'm completely distracted, then I will not be able to efficiently implement this driver for spirituality, right? This driver. What's this driver called? Spiritual exercise. That is the driver of spiritual growth. Tarbiyah ruhiyya, mujahada, spiritual exercise is the driver of growth, spiritual growth. And what affords that are the 4 pillars of the spiritual journey. Remember this. What are the 4 pillars of the spiritual journey? They say, عُزْلَةٌ مَرْحَلِيَّةٌ وَصَمْتٌ وَجُوعٌ وَسَهَرٌ. These are the 4 pillars of the spiritual journey. What are they? Temporary seclusion. I need some time to, and you know what? This is part of we're going to talk about lived spirituality as we go over the hadiths. I need temporary seclusion, disconnect. And then I need silence. Silence. I need to stop talking. I need to stop moving. You just need to take everything in for a second. Silence. That's why this tongue here, as Imam Ghazali says, This tongue is a small part of your body, but the consequences and rewards for its use or misuse are massive. أما بعد فإن اللسان من نعم الله العظيمة, right? ومن بدائع صنعه العجيبة. The tongue is one of the unique and magnificent creations of Allah. فإنه صغير جرمه عظيم طاعته وجرمه, right? Right? The tongue is small in size, but the impact it has is massive, for better or for worse. Silence, second pillar. Third pillar, ju'. I need to monitor the consumption, and that we do that through fasting. These are all elements in the Prophet's Ramadan. I need to monitor my consumption. What am I consuming? Well, what am I consuming with my eyes? What am I consuming with my ears? That gives a new definition to consumption, right? I consume with my eyes, I consume with my ears, I consume with my mind, and then I consume with my mouth and my belly, right? Monitoring consumption, right? And how that affects me. And then sahar. Sahar is wakefulness. This is for Ramadan, it's obvious what that means. So وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. So we're learning a principle from each of these verses. Spiritual exercise demands striving for excellence, which means having urgency. 1. That's from the first verse. Spiritual exercise gives birth to certainty and conviction. And that's something that needs to be cultivated and honed, as we said. Spiritual exercise demands clarity, right? That's the third principle that I just went over right now. Spiritual exercise demands clarity. Clarity of mind, emotionally, mentally, right? And then he shares a few more verses. He says, فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّن خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ هُوَ خَيْرًا وَأَعْظَمَ أَجْرًا. Spiritual exercise. Spiritual exercise gives otherworldly meaning to everything that we do, right? Again, pay attention to this. We're going to learn this, and that's in this. These things that I'm telling you, I just laid out to you guys 4 principles, right? I hope you wrote them down. They're going to be explained in the hadiths that we're going to read right now. I'm going to say the last one again. Spiritual exercise gives otherworldly meaning to everything we do, right? Even for mundane activities. You guys understand that? So mundane activities, what is it? Like things that are routine, like putting your shoes on, right? One of the hadiths that are in this section that we mentioned recently in a class, Prophet ﷺ was putting on his footgear, and he turned to the companions and he said, الْجَنَّةُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَى أَحَدِكُم مِّن شِرَاكِ نَعْلِهِ وَالنَّارُ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. Jannah is closer to one of you than the seams of his shoe, and hellfire is the same. Whoa. I was just putting on my shoes. How do you go from putting on your shoes to thinking about Jannah and Nar, right? Heaven and hell. How do you do that? Again, because spiritual exercise gives otherworldly meaning to everything you do. I realize all the goodness I do is preserved, whether appreciated or recognized by human beings or not. It goes, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّن خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ. It goes from my worldly account to my otherworldly account. I'm doing a bank transfer, right? When I put in time and effort for anything in life, helping a human being, saying a pleasant word, fixing something that's wrong, what am I doing? I am doing a bank transfer. It's transferring from my worldly to my otherworldly. Prophet ﷺ, there was people hungry and in need. One of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet ﷺ ordered that a sheep be brought. He slaughtered it. And there was an army of people waiting to be fed. And he ﷺ began distributing the food himself. And the food was enough for the entire people, even though it shouldn't be. It's just one sheep, right? It's just one sheep. How did it suffice the barakah and the blessings of the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Sayyidah Aisha said to him, pay attention to these words, right? They're words to live by. Sayyidah Aisha says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ذهبت كلها إلى الكتف. The whole sheep is gone. The only thing that remains is the shoulder. And the reason why she said that is because she knows the Prophet ﷺ loved the shoulder. So she left that in the end for him. She wanted him to take that. So then you know what the Prophet ﷺ said to her? He said, ذهبت كلها إلى الكتف. Right? Or sorry, بقيت كلها إلى الكتف. He said to her, no, you're misunderstanding. All of it remains except the shoulder. Because the shoulder is my personal consumption and that's going to be gone. Right? When I'm going to eat from the shoulder, I'm going to eat it, enjoy it, and it's done. That's it. What? Spiritual exercise gives otherworldly meaning to everything we do. Get it? Let's read some of these hadiths in this beautiful section. The first hadith is a very well-known hadith. It says, it's actually what we refer to as a hadith Qudsi. What is a hadith Qudsi? Hadith Qudsi is a statement of Allah that the Prophet ﷺ tells us about. That's what a hadith Qudsi is. So it says here, من عاد لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب وما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضت عليه وما يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ويده الذي يبطش بها ورجله التي يمشي بها ولئن سألني لأعطينه ولئن استعاذني لأعيذنه. Hadith reported by Bukhari. What does it say? Allah says, whoever takes one of my near and dear, one of my awliya, as his enemy, then I have declared war upon him. And then he says, and my servant does not draw closer to me with anything more beloved to me than what I've made obligatory upon him. And then it says, he continues to draw closer to me with extra actions until I love him. And when I love him, I will be his hearing he hears with, his eyesight that he sees with, his hand that he strikes with, and his foot that he walks with. What is this? How does this relate to spiritual exercise? It shows us that there is this journey, right? It's not a one and done type of thing. It's a journey of endless growth. So spiritual struggle, what does it remind us of? The endless growth in the path to Allah. There's no end to it. I'm not going to wake up one morning and say, الآن بلغت اليقين. That's it. Now I've reached certainty, right? You know, did you ever hear about that person who misunderstood that verse in the end of Surah Al-Hijr, right? وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ, worship your Lord until you reach yaqeen. So what? Once you reach yaqeen, stop worshiping? You know, I don't need to worship anymore, right? Because my mind, I have certainty. I don't need to worship. And worship is for people who still haven't figured it out. Once you figure it out, my worship's up here. I don't need to bow and prostrate and do those things. I got to figure it out right here. This person has everything but it being figured out up here. He has a whole lot of other things up here. May Allah protect us. Again, the path to wilayah shows us that it's this endless growth. Continue to come closer. Continue to exert yourself. Continue to try. That's what spiritual struggle is all about. Spiritual struggle teaches me that there's no end. There's no end to how much I need to push myself to grow. Let's go forward. Next hadith. I'm going to read the third hadith in this section right now. Now, again, it's going back to one of those verses he mentioned. We find this a lot, by the way. Inshallah, questions towards the end. We find this a lot, that Imam Nawawi mentions a verse, and you'll find one of the hadiths in this section goes back to that verse. Prophet قال رسول الله صلى الله عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نعمتان مغبون فيهما كثير من الناس الصحة والفراغ. He mentions this in the section on spiritual exercise, right? What does he say? Prophet ﷺ said, there are two blessings that many people are cheated out of. Good health, free time. As I said, it goes back to one of those principles I said earlier. clarity of mind, it is a pillar and a condition to be able to efficiently do spiritual struggle. If my mind's always clouded and distracted, there's no way I'm going to be able to just zoom out and look at me. Why am I saying this? Why am I operating like this? I need that. Sihha and faragh. Good health and free time. So that's one hadith. It's a famous hadith. Let's read some more hadiths. عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقوم من الليل حتى تتفطر قدماه فقلت له لم تصنع هذا يا رسول الله وقد غفر الله لك ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم أفلا أحب أن أكون عبدا شكورا. Right? Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم teaches us the importance of urgency in worship. You guys understand urgency, right? What's the opposite of urgency? What's the opposite of if I build a sense of urgency, it's to do away with what within me? Complacency. I don't want to be complacent. Being complacent, what does that mean? Being complacent. Okay, I could do it tomorrow, right? I could, I'm still young. Many people say this. I'll become religious after I get married. I'll be around the masjid more when I retire. When I retire, that's it. No more distractions. I'll be all the time in the masjid. I'm sure I'll be coming to the 5 daily prayers. That person, if he lives to retirement, will likely not do that. Will likely not do that. Because again, it's an outlook and a mode of operating. Right? So again, we learn urgency from this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ would pray from the night until his feet would swell. So Sayyidah Aisha asked, why do you do this, O Prophet of Allah, when Allah has already forgiven you? He's accepted you. And then the Prophet ﷺ teaches the Sayyidul Abideen. Who's Sayyidul Abideen? The best of worshippers to Allah, Prophet ﷺ. What does he teach us? Should I not be a grateful servant? What is that pushing me to have? When I think like that, I want to be a grateful servant. I want to be grateful for the wealth, health, family, the beautiful things in my life, everything I got. I want to be a grateful servant, right? So I'm just going to, Allah blessed me with afiyah and well-being. I'm going to be with everyone who doesn't have afiyah and well-being. I'm going to try, right? I'm going to lend a listening ear. I'm going to help wherever I can. I'm going to push. What does that mean? I'm going to have a sense of urgency. Urgency is what causes people to seize the moment. That is a critical pillar in spiritual struggle. We learn that from this hadith. Right? Now, what's my relationship like with spirituality? Is my relationship with spirituality going to be like the relationship that people who are addicted to drugs have with drugs? I don't want that type of relationship. It's unhealthy. Like chasing after the highs and then come crashing down when the effects of the drugs wear off. I don't want that type of relationship. Right, let's read the next hadith. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا عن عائشة. Let me mention the name of the companion every time I mention the hadith, so we can say رضي الله تعالى عنها. عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها أنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل العشر أحيا الليل وأيقظ أهله وجد وشد المئزر. Right? She tells us about the critical climax in the spiritual season of Ramadan. Ramadan is this 30-day, 29-day journey, and the climax of the month is in the last 10. And the Prophet ﷺ, as the finish line is approaching and as he's searching for Laylatul Qadr, Prophet ﷺ would do things he would not do any other time of the year. Right? He would stay awake all night, he'd wake up his family, and he would be very fervent and diligent in his worship. That's how he would be in the last 10. Now often and look, subhanAllah, there's a build-up to the last 10, right? There's a build-up because again, if it was just like if it was last 10 right away, none of us would be able to take advantage of it. Allah blessed us with the first 20, so we take advantage of the last 10. You ever think of that? Ever think of that? Allah blessed us with the first 20 so that we could take advantage of the last 10. First 20 are what? They're a warm-up, because I need the warm-up. It's unfortunate, but we're weak. May Allah forgive us. May Allah better us. And if anyone here is able to actually take advantage of more, mashallah, may Allah bless you and increase you. But I know I'm weak. So our predecessors, their warm-up, when would it start? When would the warm-up of our predecessors start? Right? It'd start with a thought, right? And a thought and a prayer. You know when? Okay? It'd start with a thought and a prayer. 6 months before Ramadan. Right? The predecessors would live in this Ramadan mindset. They'd pray for 6 months after Ramadan, oh Allah, accept from us Ramadan. And they would pray for 6 months before Ramadan, Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Oh Allah, bless us to see Ramadan. It starts off with a thought and a prayer. And then when Rajab comes in, that's when they start working. They say Rajab is the month you plant the seed. Sha'ban is the month you water the seeds. And Ramadan, that's the finish line. Right? It's month of hasad. But for weak people like myself, the first 20 are a warm-up so I could overcome the caffeine withdrawals, the headaches, the weakness in my body. And you find it in the last 10, you are in prime position to excel, right? Because khalas, you got used to fasting after 20 days. If Laylatul Qadr was in the first week of Ramadan, oh man, it would be impossible for us to get into the mindset and the mode of taking advantage, right? So anyway, let me go back to this hadith. Lived spirituality is a word that you need to write in your notes. Why isn't all year round like the last 10 of Ramadan? Why did the Prophet ﷺ operate in a special way in the last 10? And how do we operate the rest of the year, right? If I'm someone who has this, drug relationship with spirituality, then you know what's going to happen? Last 10 comes, I'm going to skyrocket up. Eid comes, I'm going to come crashing down. And I don't want that relationship with spirituality. That's why we learn from other hadiths, the most beloved actions to Allah are the ones that are most consistent, even if they're few. So you see, lived spirituality is plugged into our everyday. That's why we have 5 daily prayers. It's infused into our lifestyles. If you're someone who lives Islam, there's no way that you cannot have a connection with your soul. It's just not possible. Lived spirituality, right? So anyway, we have urgency and then we have lived spirituality. I want beautiful prophetic advice. You want to hear a hadith that gives us very beautiful prophetic advice? Listen to this hadith with me. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن القوي خير وأحب إلى الله من المؤمن الضعيف وفي كل خير احرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله ولا تعجز وإن أصابك شيء فلا تقل لو أني فعلت كذا كان كذا ولكن قل قدر الله وما شاء فعل فإن لو تفتح عمل الشيطان. Golden, all around advice from our Habib Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does he say here? He says, the strong believer is better than the weak one. Right? But then he tempers that with the following. But both have goodness in them. Don't forget that. Not everyone's going to be the strong believer. Some people are going to be weak. And both have goodness in them. And then the Prophet ﷺ gives advice. Be keen on what benefits you. احرص على ما ينفع. This is again teaching us the spiritual exercise. How does that work? How does spiritual exercise work? I need to be someone who's keen on their spiritual growth. I need to make it a priority. Right? If I have an opportunity for a few gatherings in the week, right? And alhamdulillah, you guys here, you chose to make this one of your gatherings in your week. You guys have work, you have school, you have family. And you have very limited time. Are you trying to ask a question? You have very limited time. You have the opportunity to go to 1, 2, 3, 4 things in your week. If all of those things that you choose to plug yourself into do little to better you spiritually, then I'm not applying this advice of the Prophet. The Prophet says, be keen on your best interest. If having a friend that is far, far away and often negatively influences you spiritually, then maybe I need to reconsider that type of friendship. Maybe I need a friendship that brings me closer to Allah, brings me closer to good places. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, and seek assistance from Allah. And don't ever feel ajz and inability. Look at this beautiful, beautiful advice from the Prophet ﷺ. Don't do it no matter what. Even if you're weak, it's okay. Ista'in billah, seek assistance from Allah. Don't feel inability, right? Beautiful words. from our Habib, وَإِنْ أَصَابَكَ شَيْءٍ, whenever you're afflicted with something, don't think about the what ifs. Don't think about the what ifs, right? The spiritual exercise is all about this. What is this? These words, what are they doing for us? They're shaping what? Right? All right, I'm thinking of all these golden advices. You listed out a few right there. Be keen on your best interest. 1, don't ever think you're incapable. Seek assistance from Allah. Right? Don't say, if you're afflicted with something, don't say, if only I did this, this, and that, it would have led to different results. Because saying what if opens the doors for the devil. These are golden advices that do what to, they shape what? They shape what? What are they shaping? Our mindsets, our attitudes. Spiritual exercise needs a mindset, needs an attitude. It's not enough for me to go to a corner and just start thinking. That thinking and that thought process needs direction. It needs direction by these type of values and principles. Not everyone who thinks ends up walking away with profound thought and inspiration. It needs to be guided, and that's why I'm saying there is a framework to the Islamic spiritual tradition. This is part of that framework. It needs to be guided by these types of words, right? Here's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We're coming close to our end time. We've been going a little less than an hour. We're coming close to the end time. We'll say a few more hadiths and we'll be done. There's another hadith also reported by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah that says the following. The Prophet ﷺ said, حُجِبَتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ وَحُجِبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. Ya Allah, a few words of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ says, hellfire has been surrounded with desires. And Jannah has been surrounded with hardships, difficulties, things that people don't like doing. Makarih, right? So with this hadith, we're getting direction. What should I be exerting myself towards? How should I be exerting myself? Well, I need to know this. I need to have a certain realization of my desires and my wants. They need to be kept on a tight leash. They need to be tamed. Why? Because desires and wants lead to hellfire. Be very careful of them. Don't be tricked by your desires and wants. Then I need to have this perspective on the difficult things in my life. Jannah is surrounded with things that the nafs doesn't like. So all of those things that make me feel, sluggish, lazy, burdened, exhausted by life, right? Those are things that lead to Jannah. Let me shift my perspective on this. You will find that a lot of what is infused into spiritual growth is all about mindset. It's all about attitude, right? And there's a khutbah I gave one time. You could go find it on our YouTube page. Guidelines of the Quranic guidelines on positive thinking, right? Positive thinking does wonders with directing our actions, directing our reactions. It's really, really, really important to understand this. A lot of these hadiths are all about mindsets, right? Shift your mindset about difficult things. Shift your mindset about your wants. Realize that this path leads down a road. The end of this road, there's something called Jannah. Deal with it. If you persevere, you'll get there. This other path leads down this other road. You follow it, it's going to destroy you, and it's ultimately going to lead you to hellfire. Be careful. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us about the spiritual exercise and all of these things. I'll share with you one more hadith, and then we'll take two more hadiths, and we'll share the questions. 2 more hadiths, and we're done with this chapter. This blessed chapter on spiritual exercise. عن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يتبع الميت 3 أهله وماله وعمله فيرجع 2 ويبقى 1 يرجع أهله وماله ويبقى عمله. Ya Allah. Prophet ﷺ says 3 things will follow the deceased person when he dies: his family, his money, his actions. 2 of them will return, 1 of them will remain. His family and his money will leave the graveyard. It's not going to stay there. And the only thing that's going to remain for him at that point is his actions. Recently, on Sunday, we had this massive janazah for a community icon. Her name is Hajja Halima Salama. May Allah have mercy on her and elevate her status in Jannah. People were mentioning her accolades and her achievements. She's someone who lived in this country for 60 years. Allah blessed her to see, she's originally from Palestine. She lived in America for 60 years. She passed away at the age of 83. She lived to see her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren all grow up. And she built them strong with faith. People were mentioning her accolades. She was a very prosperous businesswoman. And her success went way beyond this location, right? Went international. People, even overseas know about her success. One of the things I remarked at her graveyard, the greatest thing she built. What's the greatest thing that she built? In my perspective, the greatest thing that she built is the thing that led that many people to attend her janazah. It's not the money. Why would, there's tons of people who die with millions, and no one cares to even mention them when they die. No one even cares to go to their grave at all, right? What led people, inshallah, Allah is best aware of her, but what led people to go to her grave is something beyond that. The best thing she built is not her business, is generations of believers, is the impression that she left upon people with her character. That's something we could only hope for. So why does this relate to spiritual exercise? The end goal of spiritual exercise, what? What's the end goal of spiritual exercise? I'm going to continue to spiritually exercise. I need to understand the end of this ends with me, ends my life. And I need to realize priority, right? Where does my money fit in the spectrum of my priorities? Where do my assets lie in terms of the extent of my priorities, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what this hadith gives us perspective on priorities. That's something that's needed to guide spiritual struggle and spiritual exercise. I need to have perspective on priorities. The last thing I'll mention to you guys in this section, عن أبي صفوان عبد الله بن بسر الأسلمي رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خير الناس من طال عمره وحسن عمله. Prophet ﷺ said, the best of people are those who are blessed with long lives in His devotion, with good deeds. Long lives with good deeds. That's the best blessing from Allah. Best blessing from Allah, long life, good deeds. This should be the dua of every mu'min. Allahumma atil umri fi ta'atik. Allahumma atil umri fi ta'atik. Oh Allah, lengthen my life and give me a long life in your servitude and your devotion. That's perspective on spiritual exercise. It gives meaning, right? Again, this is another hadith. Again, like if we want to categorize these things, well, look, again, I'm telling you, like there's layers of explaining this book. If I really wanted to, I can go in detail explaining how each of these hadith could be traced back to one of those verses he mentioned in the beginning. What's the hadith that, let's see who took notes. What's the verse that we mentioned in the beginning that gives us perspective? Gives us perspective on the greater pursuit that we have at hand in this life. Which of the principles that I mentioned is most aligned with getting a wholesome perspective on deeds, behaviors, life? What do you think? Does anyone actually have the original as-Saliheen open in front of them? Raise your hand. I want to see. I asked you guys, you could open it. You could go to online, get it, follow along. Who has the original as-Saliheen? I'm reading from a book, right? Anyone have the original text open in front of them? Come on, guys. Next time, right? You don't want this to just be a general lecture. You actually want to grow. Open the book in front of you next time, right? If you had the book in front of you, you would know that it is the actions, or I should say, spiritual exercise gives otherworldly perspective, or gives otherworldly meaning to everything we do. Remember the last principle I said? Spiritual exercise gives. It's the last principle I mentioned. You got it? Huh? The last thing. The last thing I mentioned was spiritual exercise gives otherworldly meaning to everything we do. And where did I get this principle from? The verse, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّن خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ. Any inkling of goodness you do, you find it by Allah. Right? Even if people don't realize it or appreciate it, it's preserved by Allah in your otherworldly account. Right? When we're talking about bank transfers, this is perspective. Why is it worth living a long life? There's only one reason that makes it worthwhile to have a long life. What's the reason that makes it worthwhile to have a long life? Good deeds. Exactly. Husn al-amal. The only reason that makes it worthwhile to live a long life, doing more good deeds. Not so you can see your great grandkids, not so you can earn more, because all that's going to go out the window, right? And all that's gone. One reason that gives perspective, good deeds. It's the end of the explanation of the section. Let's look at some of the questions, and we're done in 10 minutes, inshallah. 10 minutes, we're done. You have a question?
So at the beginning, you said that you know what they are.
In English? Yes. Patience with worship, or patience in doing worship, and then patience in avoiding sin, and then patience with dealing with trials. الصبر على طاعة الله، الصبر عن معصية الله، والصبر على البلاء. First question. Second question? Yeah?
I was going to ask for the first hadith, من عاد وليا, for the part where it says the nawafil. If someone is not doing nawafil because they're thinking of missed prayers in their past, can they still qualify?
All right. Here, the word nawafil is not only referring to prayers, by the way. Nawafil refers to everything extra, right? You see these crumbs on the floor from the previous event in the masjid that Ridwan didn't get to clean yet, because we have this class now, right? Nawafil would be, let me go clean that before anyone else cleans it, right? Nawafil would be, let me do an extra step let me take an extra step to make someone happy and put a smile on their face. That's nawafil, right? Nawafil would refer to every extra thing that you don't have to do. So you continue to draw closer to Allah Azza wa Jal with those extra things until you become beloved to Allah. You get it? So, and about the prayer thing, that's fine. If you're making qada, of course you should make qada before you do, because the first part of the hadith says you will only draw closer to Him with, there's nothing better to draw closer to Allah to than with what He made obligatory. So doing qada takes precedence. All right? Who has a direct question? Sisters, go ahead. Yes. Yes. We apply it every day with the 5 daily prayers. That's a sense of temporary seclusion, right? Temporary seclusion could also mean a day I take to focus on my nafs, right? Okay, I have certain days, 10 temporary seclusion, last 10 of Ramadan, I'm going to do i'tikaf, right? Temporary seclusion would be, all right, you know what, I have a day off of work or school, and I don't want to be distracted with a lot of things. So I'm going to spend some time doing various types of worship today. I'm going to do extra salawat a little bit, read a little bit extra Quran, listen to a lecture. I'm going to infuse that day with a lot of goodness. Take advantage of those opportunities. We all need temporary seclusion. Why is it temporary seclusion, not permanent? Because permanent seclusion is not meant for the believer, right? We all need that type of uzla marhaliyya, that's how we refer to in Arabic, so that we get tafakkur, right? I need clarity of mind. You know what temporary seclusion is also? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go on a hike. That's a form of temporary seclusion. The whole idea behind temporary seclusion is it gives a sense of clarity for the mind to begin to operate in the way that it needs to operate. Me to start thinking about the bigger things in life, the things that really matter, right? So that's temporary seclusion. All of that's temporary seclusion, yeah. What else? Do we have any other direct questions from the sisters? Any direct questions from the sisters? Or before you take your question, says Hassan, let me look at the Slido since we want to give it meaning. If I don't answer questions from the Slido, then no one will send anymore. All right. Recently, finding it harder and harder to fight desires as if I'm slipping. How to stay steadfast? Sorry for the general question. One thing that you could do to fight against your desires is come to this space. This space heals the influence of desires on your heart. It's a spiritual space. Here, this place is lit, not by the lighting, right? It's lit by the presence of angels. It's lit by the presence of rahmah. That's what the masajid are. You're feeling a strong sense of desire, come sit in the masjid. If you're feeling that, and I told people this before, I told people this as an advice, you know what? Masjid's open many hours of the day. And many of those hours, it's completely empty. If you feel this strong urge to follow your desires when you're outside, and you want to calm it down, come sit in the masjid. Do your studies inside the masjid. Read Quran inside the masjid. Pray your salawat in the masjid. It's a critical part of taming those desires. You're feeling overpowering desires. Other things that you could do. Don't isolate. Desires fester with isolation, like cancer, right? The worst thing for a person who has overpowering desires is to have many hours in solitude. So going back to temporary seclusion is not this open-ended thing. Like, I'm not going to sit in my room for like 6 hours and all of a sudden walk away as like this, with all these spiritual realizations. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Some people, they do not need temporary seclusion in their current state of their growth. Well, who can tell me this? I need an advisor. I need a mentor. For someone who has overpowering desires, their greatest enemy is free time. Right? That's why it says here, right? If I don't consume myself with goodness, it will consume me with falsehood. Right? If I have a lot of desires running wild, then you know what? I need to tame it by exhausting my mind and my body. I'm gonna work, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna go to the salawat in the masjid, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I'm not gonna leave a free moment in my time. So again, overpowering desires, don't take that journey alone. Try to find a friend. Try to surround yourself with a good support system. Everyone needs it. I hope these types of classes and the ones behind the screen, they've missed out. To be honest with you, unless you have to be there. It depends on circumstance. If someone had the choice to come to the masjid and they just chose, well, you know what, it's just more convenient to listen to it from home, I'm telling you, you're missing out on the experience. You're missing out on a good portion of the experience. I'm hoping that this type of gathering would be a catalyst to develop those types of relationships that will be for the sake of Allah. That's what I'm hoping. And it'll help you with this struggle that you're dealing with. Yeah, but anyone who's unable to come, may Allah Azza wa Jal reward you immensely and exponentially for wanting to come but not being able to. So here, we have another question. Facing a life-changing, this is the last question I'll take. It's the one that has the most votes up. Facing a life-changing decision, like marriage, children, new career, relocating, facing fears that brings what-ifs and perhaps waswas due to stories. Advice? My advice is get advice, right? That's a lot of big decisions. Marriage, children, new career, relocating. The worst decision that a person, so what is my advice? My advice is, what's my advice? My advice is get advice. What does that mean? Sit down, have a discussion, talk to somebody, right? The worst decision I could make for myself in my life is to deny myself the presence of advisors and mentors in my life. We all need it. We all need people to bounce ideas off of and get perspective from, and so don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to yourself. Sit down with somebody and have a more meaningful discussion if you're going to make those types of big decisions, right? So those are some of the advices that are in this book. What I'll try to do is the remaining questions that are here, inshallah, I'll try to answer them on the WhatsApp group in the coming days, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So that's something I'll do, bi'idhnillah, with some voice notes on the WhatsApp group. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.